Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who is joining us live and also to those who may be watching this recording at a later time. My name is Anthony Sátiro, and I'm pleased to serve as the technical leader for this panel of the Global Symposium on AI, Education, Language, and Society, organized by the International Research Center and on AI and the Tecla Research Group at the Federal University of Sergipe, Brazil. I would like to welcome Karoline Garcez, who will serve as the moderator of this panel, introduce our guests, and she will also explain how the question and answer section will work at the end. I wish everyone an excellent event. I now hand over to you, Caroline Garcez, and I will stay here providing support. All right?
Thank you, Anthony. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us. I am Caroline Garcez and I'm from LINC Research Group, and I'll be moderating this panel. Our session will work as follows. Each panelist will have up to 30 minutes to answer to the central question of the symposium, which is how is artificial intelligence transforming educational, linguistic, and or social practices in your country or field of research, and what challenges emerge from this process. At the end, we will have a Q&A session with questions directed to each of them. As you follow each presentation, you may send your questions directly through the YouTube chat. The panel leader and I will be monitoring them. I will introduce each panelist at the moment of their presentation. And at the end, I will invite everyone back on screen so we can begin the Q&A session and move toward the closing of this panel. Please note that when there's 1 minute left for each presentation, the panel leader will bring me back on screen so I can continue the moderation. Let's begin with our first panelist. Dr. Luciana de Oliveira is professor in the Department of Teaching and Learning in the School of Education at Virginia Commonwealth University. Most recently, her research has focused on applications of GenAI in TESOL pedagogy, with a scholarship on use GenAI-generated mentor texts and leveraging GenAI to expand teachers' pedagogical potential. She is the recipient of the 2026 James E. Elodis Award for Service to TESOL, the highest honor presented by TESOL International Association, and the 2025 Leadership Through Research Award by Second Language Research Special Interest Group of the American Educational Research Association. Thank you once again for accepting our invitation, and I wish you an excellent presentation.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for the introduction, and it's wonderful to be here with all of you. I'm going to go ahead and share screen. Share screen. Oh, I'm doing it. Okay. Can you all Can you see my PowerPoint?
Not yet.
Okay. I couldn't hear anybody. I'm having some issues with my internet, I think.
Can you hear me now?
I'm going to try again.
Okay.
Can you see my presentation? I think I may need... Yes? No? I can't hear anything.
Not yet, Dr. Luciana.
Present button on the screen. Where is that? I was... Present. Okay, let's try that.
Hi, do you need any help?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I am not. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and present and hope that you can all hear me. If not, somebody can text me.
We can hear you perfectly,
I
Dr.
think
Luciana.
somebody is texting me. Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes, Dr.
Yes,
Luciana,
perfectly.
can you hear us?
Okay. I'm texting with Pessin.
Yes.
Okay. If you can hear me, hopefully you can all hear me. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started because we've lost a few minutes already. So I'm going to talk specifically about TESOL and Gen AI in pedagogy. Can you see my screen too? No?
No.
Okay. So
I just can see you.
I'm going to go ahead and I've already sent the presentation over. I'm going to do it on WhatsApp as well, so one of you can find it. But I'm going to go ahead and start talking so that we don't waste more time. I'm going to do it in a couple of different ways. I don't have WhatsApp. Sorry about that, guys. Would you like to start with another presenter while we figure this out?
Sure, we can do that.
I'm so sorry.
No problem. Dr. Raúl, can we go with you now? Can we switch? Oh, we can see now, Dr. Luciana, your presentation.
All right. Looks like you can see my presentation now and you can all hear me. All right, so after a few minutes of delays, I'll go ahead and talk about TESOL and Gen AI in pedagogy. Next slide. So Gen AI is transforming TESOL pedagogy by shifting the use of technologies from tools to a collaborator that you interact with to expand what I call teachers' pedagogical potential. It can be very helpful in instruction in the areas of lesson design, instructional materials, class modeling, guided practice, and feedback. It can also assist in generating what we call mentor texts for writing instruction. And that's really going to be what I'm going to be focusing on today. And we need to develop teachers' AI and digital literacy skills, including fine-tuned prompt literacy. Next slide. So there, of course, we all know that there are different types of Gen AI, including text generation, image generation, and audio music generation. And all of them have very useful applications in TESOL pedagogy. What I'm going to focus on for the most part today is text generation. Next slide. So in the teaching of English to speakers of other languages, so specifically TESOL, we have seen Gen AI applications as a teacher job aid to, again, create images, create questions, create songs, and create content as well. And I've used it in specifically for professional learning workshops with teachers, helping them see how they can use Gen AI tools in creating mentor texts for their students. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I mean by mentor texts. Okay, next slide. So in the TESOL field, we have witnessed a shift from using technology tools more generally to using Gen AI tools more purposefully. My work has primarily focused on prompt engineering as an essential skill for ESOL teachers, and I've collaborated with Dr. Alessandra Elizabeth dos Santos for the past 4 years, I would say 3 to 4 years, and have learned a lot through that process, that collaboration. And so you're going to see some of that collaboration here today. So this skill of prompt engineering involves crafting optimized commands and instructions to achieve desired outcomes from AI systems, reflecting a transformation in the practices of human-machine interaction and a powerful combination of innovation and humanity. In the teaching of L2 writing specifically, so second language writing, which is my field of study, specifically within the TESOL field, the use of mentor text is an important part of what we call genre-based pedagogy. So how we use genres in the teaching of writing. By using Gen AI technology, educators can generate mentor texts in different genres and integrate them into their teaching. The next slide. So what is genre-based pedagogy? This is just a very general overview. I'm not going to go through all of these phases. But genre-based pedagogy through the teaching and learning cycle is a very powerful pedagogy for the teaching of multilingual learners in the US context. So I didn't mention that I'm in the US context. So that's what I'm presenting specifically using examples from. These are the different phases of the teaching and learning cycle. So you start with building shared knowledge of the topic. Then you go into sustained reading. Then you go into what we call deconstruction or modeling. And this is specifically where we use mentor texts, what we call mentor texts. So they're models for students to understand the expectations for the writing that they're going to produce. So deconstruction is really where you're going to be using mentor texts. Then you have what we call joint construction or guided practice. That's where when teachers and students write a text together as a class. Collaborative construction with students collaborating with each other, and then finally independent construction. So this model for genre-based pedagogy has been implemented all over the world, and it's really, really powerful. One of the challenges that we have with implementation of the teaching and learning cycle is the lack of mentor texts. And so that's why Gen AI specifically applied in the TESOL field, and even more specifically in the teaching of second language writing, can be so powerful, because then we can generate mentor texts to use with our students in any content area, not just English language arts, but also science, mathematics, and social studies. Next slide. So what we do here in the US context, there are a lot of states that use the WIDA 2020 English Language Development Standards Framework. So if you just Google WIDA 2020 ELD framework, you will get to the standards. And they use the notion of key language uses to talk about genre families. So there are 4 of them: narrate, inform, explain, and argue. And what I'm going to show today is an application of Gen AI tools in creating mentor texts based on my work with Dr. Dos Santos in the context of the WIDA standards. So some challenges in TESOL pedagogy and how Gen AI can assist. So as I mentioned already, finding mentor texts for teaching multilingual learners in K through 12, that is teaching at the elementary and secondary levels in the US context specifically, that's a particular challenge. I think we can really address that challenge, not only in the creation of mentor texts, but thinking about lesson design, class modeling, guided practice, and providing feedback to our students. While teachers set goals and purpose, explain social context, facilitate joint construction, and provide final assessment, again, in the teaching of second language writing, Gen AI can assist in generating mentor texts, highlighting linguistic patterns, providing alternative sentence patterns and organization, and providing first-level formative feedback against rubrics. So with the many affordances offered by Gen AI, it's also important to develop teachers' AI and digital literacy skills, including fine-tuned prompt literacy. So that means teachers need to be able to know how to design prompts to be able to then use them in generating mentor text. That's, of course, just one part of prompt literacy. And so it's really important to have that as sort of a base for TESOL pedagogy. Teachers must verify AI outputs for hallucinations or incorrect facts and cultural bias. And of course, you can modify prompts to then address those issues. And they should be informed about strengths and limitations of Gen AI to guide the writing process and employ collaborative writing. Specifically for TESOL teacher education, we really should focus on practical implementation and potential benefits of Gen AI for TESOL pedagogy and especially writing instruction. Next slide. So now I'm going to show an example of what I meant by prompt creation, and this is based on an article that I wrote with Dr. Dos Santos and was published last year in the Journal of Second Language Writing, which is the top journal for our field of second language writing. So we're very happy to have this published, and we're actually collaborating on something else right now, really exciting work. And so we created this prompt creation reference chart for mentor texts, specifically for mentor texts, based on some other work that I did with Dr. Dos Santos and also Dr. Paulo Boasorti. which was published also last year. So we have here this prompt creation reference chart that should guide teachers in designing their prompts. For specifically, we used for ChatGPT in this article, but I have used Gemini and other Gen AI platforms as well. So we start by thinking about who the author is and including that information in the prompt. So providing some background information. Then we have what we call the request, or what are the main characteristics of the prompt. And we use the WIDA 2020 English Language Development Standards Framework as a frame. We talk about the key language use. So the genre family is explained, and the topic. So having the topic is very important as part of that. The genre that we're going to request. So in our case, was an explanation. We also included the number of words, very important because we're talking about different grade levels. And so you can prompt Gen AI to include the number of words. So to do the text in that specific number of words, or using the specific number of words. Then we include language features. And again, we use the WIDA framework, but also some of my work on genres and genre families to design these language features, to include these language features. So for example, causal connectors to link events. So that language feature for this specific genre and key language use is very important. And then finally, we include the purpose. What is the purpose for? So purpose 1 is to describe each stage of the life cycle of a butterfly, and purpose 2 is to explain why each stage happens. So now you're going to see an example of a prompt based on this prompt creation reference chart. Next slide. So in terms of a practical implementation, we used grades 2 to 3 from the WIDA 2020 framework. The content area was science. The topic was the life cycle of a butterfly, and the key language use was explained. Next. So here are the specific language features that we included. I'll let you take a look. Next slide. So here's the prompt. So I'm a grade 2 science teacher in the US. My class is learning about life cycles. Generate a text in the genre family, explain. This text needs to provide explanations about the phenomenon, the life cycle of a butterfly, in a way that the last step is also the beginning of the cycle. The text is of up to 90 words, which will serve as a mentor text for my grade 2 students. Its language features associated with the genre family explain are, and then we include the language features and also some examples. Okay, so you can see there are specific examples. Generate this text bearing in mind these purposes: to explain how the life cycle of a butterfly works, to describe each stage of this life cycle, and to explain why each stage happens. So take a quick look and see if you can identify who the author is, the background information, the request, and the purpose. Okay, next. So here we highlighted so you can visualize the prompt and the main pieces, the main parts of the prompt. So next slide. So here is the prompt on ChatGPT and the output at the bottom. Next slide. Okay, so here you can see the mentor text or the output. And please take a quick look to see if you can identify some of these language features. Again, for the TESOL field, making sure that students understand some of these language features, it's really, really important. And so what we did, Beth and I, Dr. Dos Santos and I, what we did was there was the piece of course, creating the prompt, but the additional piece that is really important for us who work with teachers who are going to work with multilingual learners in the US context is really identifying these language features that are then going to help us think about how you can teach them to our students, to explain the expectations, to ensure the students know the expectations for this particular genre. So take a quick look while I sip some water. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here is where, of course, us as TESOL teachers come in and think about this output and think about, okay, what are, again, these language features that are going to be really important in my pedagogy for my multilingual learners. So here you see some causal, it's supposed to be causal, not casual, causal connectors to LINC events. So you can see them in blue. So when, because are very important. Prepositional phrases to provide details of where, when, and how. So you have on a leaf, into tiny caterpillars, inside the chrysalis, into a beautiful butterfly, as some examples. Connectors to sequence and order events across paragraphs. So you have things like then and so. Timeless present tense is all over. You can see right from the beginning, starts, hatch, munch on, growing, form, undergo, changes, etc. And cohesion to reference ideas across text. So you can see things like a butterfly connecting back to the life cycle of a butterfly. You also have the caterpillars connecting back to caterpillar. You have these eggs. You have they, the caterpillar, the butterfly, the cycle, and then butterflies and their species. So you can see all over how cohesion is built up in this generated text. And then, of course, there are other features as well. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the idea here is that what you as an ESOL teacher can do with the mentor text, again, generated by a Gen AI platform. So it's important for us to think about not only how to design the prompt, but also when you have the mentor text, then how you are going to analyze the text in this way. So with, some of these language features in mind, and also how you're going to present this text to students. So it's a multi-step sort of planning with how you design the prompt, and then also how you're going to analyze the generated mentor text, and how, after you analyze, how you're going to present this to your students. So this is the work I'm really proud of with Dr. Dos Santos, and we're collaborating on another article now that's due next week. So it's going to be a busy week next week working on that. And I'm also working with 2 elementary school teachers from South Carolina. And we are taking this one step further and thinking about not only the design of the prompt, but also how you present this mentor text to multilingual learners. So we have an article that was just accepted in a journal and should be out in a couple of months probably. And there she is, Dr. Beth. It's a wonderful collaboration, and I missed the end there, but I'm really excited to be continuing to collaborate with Beth, who was, I didn't mention at the beginning of the presentation, but she was a visiting scholar here at VCU, my first visiting scholar from Brazil. I've had many others after Beth. We've hosted 10 visiting scholars in the past 4 years. And so we're really excited to continue to collaborate. So next slide. So this is pretty much the end of my presentation. So what is then the future of TESOL pedagogy and Gen AI? I really believe that we need to prepare teachers to use Gen AI purposefully. So it's really, really important to think critically about, of course, how we use Gen AI in teacher preparation with our students. And so that's why I continue to collaborate, not just with researchers, but also with teachers, so that we can take this work further. We also need to think about how we can develop teachers' pedagogical potential in using Gen AI. So this is some work that I've done with Dr. Larissa Olesova, with whom I have collaborated for over 20 years now, I think. And so on tech tools and lots of, and we are now working on literature review, a comprehensive literature review of how Gen AI has been used in the field of TESOL, not just in K through 12, but really in K through 16. So expanding into higher education. And we're hoping to publish that in the next year or so. We also need, again, I've mentioned this a couple of times already, to develop teachers' AI and digital literacy skills, including fine-tuned prompt literacy. So really, really important. And I am redesigning one of our TESOL methods courses here at VCU, which I'm going to teach in the fall. And I'm going to integrate, of course, Gen AI and all of this work on prompt creation in my TESOL methods course. So my idea here is for us to really think about how we can integrate these ideas that I presented today in TESOL methods courses. We also need to model the use of Gen AI in professional learning for practicing teachers. So we have the piece that is for pre-service teachers, which is what I'm doing now, is the integration of Gen AI tools in TESOL methods courses. But we also have work, I do work with practicing teachers. So how do we model this use in professional learning? And also think about research use of Gen AI with ESOL teachers. So how do we research the use of Gen AI with ESOL teachers? Really, really important. And we want to, of course, continue to present practical applications at conferences and beyond. So next slide. Here are my references. So some of the work that I mentioned. So here's my book that was published in 2023 that Beth and I used as part of our work in coming up with those language features to include in the prompts. The article that I mentioned with Beth on using AI text-generated mentor text for genre-based pedagogy and second language writing. The other chapter that I wrote with Dr. Bossarti as well. And so Beth was the lead author in that. It was, I think, my first publication on this. So really exciting to see that. And some of the other work that I mentioned as well. So that is it for me. And apologies again for the delay, but I think I caught up on being more succinct on some slides. And I'm looking forward to the other presentations of the other panelists today. Thank you so much. And thanks for your patience.
That was a very interesting and enriching presentation. Thank you for sharing your work, Dr. Luciana. Please note that questions for this presentation are now closed. I now invite Dr. Raúl to join us. As a reminder, while you follow this presentation, you may send your questions directly through the YouTube chat.
Hold on, I'm just giving myself a minute to process the presentation, so it's uploaded and I can just present it from here. Just taking a second.
Okay, I'm gonna read your resume, Dr. Raúl.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Okay. Dr. Raúl Mora is an associate professor at the School of Education and Pedagogy at Universidad Pontificia Bolivariana in Medellin, where he teaches courses on bilingual education, discourse analysis, literacy, and critical theory at the undergraduate and doctoral levels. He currently holds the highest rank of senior researcher in Colombia, as designated by the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. He has served as a visiting professor, scholar, and guest lecturer at universities in Colombia, Poland, Mexico, Czechia, Brazil, the United States, Spain, and Norway. He is currently researching how people learn languages in cities and gaming communities, how to teach different types of literacy in language education, the importance of critical approaches to teaching English and multilingualism in developing countries, and how to use AI thoughtfully in language teaching, all of which he explores at the Literacies in Second Language Projects Research Lab, which he leads at UPB. He co edited the Handbook of Critical Literacies, Translanguage and Multimodality as Flow, Agency, and a New Sense of Advocacy in and from the Global South, Reimagining Literacy in the Age of AI, and the forthcoming volume English Language Teacher Education in Latin America. He also edited the volume Understanding Second Language Users as Gamers, Language as Victory. He has presented his work both in person and virtually at events across Colombia, Argentina, Brazil, Canada, Denmark, India, Indonesia, Norway, Spain, Switzerland, the US, and Vietnam. Enjoy the presentation.
Well, thank you. Let's see now. I think we can start. Can everybody see my screen or present? No, I think it should be. You should be able to see. Okay, there you are. So there's my presentation. Wonderful. So good afternoon across the miles. Broadcasting today from Trondheim in Norway. Happy to join the Global Symposium and happy to go after the presentation of an esteemed friend and colleague in Dr. Luciana Oliveira. Because I can see in her presentation and mine there are overlaps, but then there are also some substantial differences. So it's always exciting to get to the point. So my presentation, I titled it Reimagining Literacy in Second Languages, AI, Youth Practices and Systemic Challenges in Colombia. So to situate this, I framed the question, the central question, I have framed it as thinking about artificial intelligence transforming literacy in second languages in Colombia and the challenges that emerge from this process. I'll briefly talk about the context, then I'll talk about some of the epistemological reconfigurations that we need as we think about AI, some of those new language ecologies that are emerging as a consequence of AI, and some methodological and systemic considerations. So before we begin, it's important to situate this conversation around this idea of literacy in second languages and what that entails. So when I talk about literacy in second languages, I'm talking about the exploration of these different language ecologies that emerge in physical and virtual spaces, and how we can adapt frameworks such as multimodality, critical literacies, AI literacies in language teaching today, and how when we think about that, we also have to think about how to disrupt the traditional geographical disparities across rural and urban spaces. Equally important in this conversation is how we move away from some of the discourse around AI that seems to be deeply entrenched in technological determinism. That we can see that there are a lot of historical reactions to technology that seem to be deficit thinking, that seem to promote prohibitive views, highly fueled by dystopian media. And I'm gonna stop for 1 second because I'm starting to realize that this presentation, I'm gonna have to do something here because I'm not really crazy about. Hold on, I just need one little minute because I just realized I'm gonna use the public PDF instead. So let me remove this one, and yeah, because I noticed the something will happen in the processing. So I indulge me for 1 minute while I re-upload the PDF file that probably has much better resolution. Okay, it should be popping up. Okay, can we see it now? That's much better. Yeah, that looks a lot better. Sorry, that the conversion to PowerPoint really messed up some of the outline. So this looks much better. So as I was saying, as we look at the conversational AI, we want to move away from deficit thinking views and prohibitive views of AI, and move away from the dystopian narratives and this idea that students are going to inevitably cheat by using generative AI and other tools, and start thinking more proactively, as in what kind of practices we want in the next 5, in the next 10 years. So that's kind of like the context of this presentation. Now, we move on into how we want to think about these epistemological considerations. And first of all, I like to propose the idea of this notion of the everyday cyborg, heavily inspired in some of the early work by Donna Haraway, in this idea that the way we live today, we live in a symbiotic state with the digital infrastructures. I mean, just look no further at this very event, how there is a symbiosis between what I have in my laptop and then what I have on StreamYard, and then the delay it has with YouTube, and how all those things are connected. And how, as we think about that, we really want to create new ways to think the relationship we establish with the machines, or the relationship we establish with the AI. Then we have this concept of digital muse, where we emphasize the idea of textual creation in a conversation. How we remain at the helm, how we are the creative part, but AI provides us with different ways to overcome writer's block, or how to think about different directions for the text. I see a lot of overlaps with the first presentation in the notion of how the digital muse, for example, can also overlap with the notion of the mentor text that Dr. Oliveira was discussing. So those are two initial considerations, and we'll add a few more things as we go. So, but also we want to start looking at where these practices are taking place, and start thinking about those digital spaces where our youth and our teachers and our communities operate. And we start by looking at this notion I call the zero gravity spaces, where are these places, digital and virtual environments, where the traditional geographical and physical limitations are gone. So once you have places where we remove those physical limitations, this floating that happens in these places allows for more creative textual creation, for more creative meaning making, for other forms of multiple creation as a consequence of being in those very digital spaces. But being very mindful that zero gravity does not mean zero risk. And that we have to be careful to develop an ethics of care of how we operate and we conduct ourselves and we navigate those spaces, attending to this idea of the digital wildfires of all these different ways to navigate social media, to navigate the misinformation, the fake news environments, and of course, examples we have seen of how these digital platforms can be weaponized to promote hate messages, to promote bigotry, and how we have to be actively engaged in countering those messages. Recently, I have taken a lot of inspiration in how to think about AI by looking at gaming cultures and by looking at gaming literacies, specifically in my recent work on language as victory, and how, as we look at these gaming servers and we look at these gaming communities, we see this high level of engagement with language, and how that invites us to look at second language learning, second language teaching, second language use beyond traditional notions of what language entails, and how in these spaces, operating in multiple languages is vital for collaboration, is vital for the success of our work in digital environments. And on this, equally important is to think about how, when we're working with youth, working with our students, how their identity in these digital spaces is shaping up, and being very mindful that we have to look at what's happening in the platforms like TikTok or Instagram, and see how youth, particularly marginalized youth, are creating what authors like Cortez and colleagues of VACA talk about, the algorithmic counter spaces. So how are they disrupting that algorithmic view that we have on social media, and how that needs to translate into other ways to train people, to train ourselves in countering the algorithm, how we create virtual environments that are safe, where we can find alternative narratives, where you can find this another sense of culture, another sense of pride, besides some of the traditional messages that sometimes we are bombarded by on the social media. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of these, how I'm framing this in terms of research, and how that starts to translate specifically in the context of Colombia and also a little bit in Latin America. So I have been working for a while already on this notion I like to call multimodal curricular design, where we want to start moving away from thinking of ourselves as passive consumers and thinking more as active creators, where we can have a critical view of that creation, and how that we return to that initial symbiosis we talked about when I brought up the notion of the everyday cyborg, and this notion of how our agency can potentiate the use of AI in educational practices and otherwise. This concept itself has three pillars. So first of all, I look at the critical perspective, how we interrogate power structures through this, and how we can use this full range of multimodal communication that I call the rich palette, and returning to this idea of being proactive, the proactive approach of thinking of in terms of speculative futures and playful creation for remixing. And I've also been experimenting a little bit with this notion of diethnography. Diethnography understood as kind of like a new twist on the traditional notion of duethnography. And my partner and I have been reflecting on this for quite some time already. As we start now thinking diethnographically with the AI, in how we understand the dialogic and dialectic relationship that happens when you are engaging with the generative AI, for example, and also think about how across researchers we can understand how we ourselves envision that symbiosis, and how we envision ourselves as everyday cyborgs, and how all that exchange of ideas creates new ways to engage with AI. Moving a little closer to the area of language education, it's important to think about how an idea such as translanguaging and this use of this fluid use of the linguistic repertoire can disrupt some traditional understandings of how AI appears, how we can provide a decolonial model toward AI, and how it can help us once again disrupt the algorithmic bias. And I think the first presentation also brought that up. It's also important in that regard to look at how AI can help us in terms of linguistic diversity, and how we can use AI, for example, to support language revitalization, how we can use it to promote endangered languages. There are some interesting examples happening in Colombia right now, where researchers are using AI for language preservation, and there are cases of the Wayunaki and the Nasa Yuve in Colombia. This also brings up some systemic challenges that are worth addressing And first of all, is we have to be aware that there is a digital divide, and that if we do not work collectively to counter that divide, it's going to widen and it's going to become more epistemic. So if we're not working with the communities to counter these epistemic divides, these digital divides, we risk that our youth could lose the possibility to question and evaluate information and simply accept whatever the algorithm gives them, whatever the generative AI gives them at face value. Equally necessary in this conversation is to look at issues of linguistic hegemony. It doesn't escape my mind that that I'm presenting in English, despite being a Spanish native speaker. In part because of how English seems to be the lingua franca where many of us operate. But at the same time, we also have to think about how we disrupt some of the cultural assumptions related to the dominance of English, and how we can think about this notion of sovereign AI. And for example, initiatives like LATAM GPT, where we can start thinking of regional ways to address AI that are more localized in nature, that are more responsive to the cultural sensitivities across languages and across linguistic repertoires. And one interesting way to address that, and like in something that's happening in Colombia right now, it's right now the government is promoting a new AI policy, where we want to start thinking about new frameworks for governance, for risk mitigation, and how we can develop the digital talent from the base, from the pre-K to 5 level. So what does this all mean for, let's say, for teacher education, first of all? Well, it means that we have to start thinking in terms of teacher training that transcends the basic use of AI, and start thinking of higher order, that we have to start thinking of capacity building efforts at the local, the state, and the national levels. But most importantly, we have to invite teachers to be co-designers. We cannot think about AI here if we are going to keep pushing teachers to be spectators, or to simply follow orders, or to simply follow directions. The implications of these ideas is we need to bring teachers to the forefront. We need to bring students to the forefront as leaders in the conversation. Regarding the case of literacy in second languages, I think it's important to continue integrating the everyday cyborg as part of the linguistic practices that happen in our classrooms and in our cities and in our digital spaces. How we continue to develop this idea of the digital muse, where we can really get into co-creation, but co-creation that students can really develop ownership and full understanding. Understand that there is a lot of learning happening in zero gravity spaces, but we also have to push for the ethics of care to navigate the risks of the algorithms, and get teachers to become critical designers, but from a culturally responsive standpoint. Now, to just wrap it up and get to the final question. So when we think about the question that we posed at the beginning, I think it's important to consider, first of all, that we want to transform the educational practices, moving from the technological determinism to a symbiotic praxis, where we can use the everyday cyborg and the digital muse as knowledge co-creation. We have to transform the linguistic practices, as in how we leverage zero gravity spaces to foster gaming literacies, translanguaging, how we transform their social practices in terms of how we empower youth to actually shape algorithm counter spaces, build digital resilience, and how to counter misinformation and biases, how we address the challenges, as in we tackle the profound epistemic divide and linguistic hegemony by looking for more sovereign AI policies and infrastructural equity, and finally, how the notion I propose of multimodal critical design can help teachers and students and researchers become architects of possibility, where we can design equitable and inclusive AI futures in and from the global South. So with that, I really want to thank you all for the time you have allowed me to be part of this incredible conversation. My congratulations to Paula Sorci for the amazing work putting together this event, to all the organizers and the people behind the scenes for the incredible support. I look forward to listening to the third presentation and the Q&A that will follow shortly after. So with a little personal moment where I like to share the pictures of my two dogs, Connor McLeod and Duncan McLeod. Thank you very much. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Raúl. Please note that questions for this presentation are now closed. I now invite Gurumurthy Kasinathan to join us. As a reminder, while you follow this presentation, you may send your questions directly through the YouTube chat. Gurumurthy Kasinathan is one of the founders of IT for Change. He has 34 years of experience in the development and corporate sector. His experience also includes stints in the government and in academia. Guru leads projects in the area of education, including research, demonstration projects, systemic teacher education reform, and policy advocacy. His areas of expertise include EdTech, teacher education, educational leadership, and free and open digital technologies. He was earlier with the Azim Premji Foundation, where he was deputed to work in the policy planning unit in the Karnataka Education Department. He has been a visiting faculty at TISS Mumbai and Hyderabad for their education, leadership and management, and ICT and education courses. Prior to that, he was with iFlex Solutions, now Oracle Financial Software Services, and AF Ferguson Management Consultancy Services. Enjoy the presentation.
Hello, are you able to see the screen? I'm just doing screen share. Can you see a concept map?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be a part of this very august gathering. I'm thankful to the organizers. I'm thankful to Professor Paula as well for the opportunity to collaborate. I'm going to present a slightly varying perspective from what the first two speakers have spoken. I'll present a more critical perspective of AI in education. I come from an organization, ID for Change, which is doing a lot of research on how AI is impacting the various sectors of our society. And we see a lot of cause for concern as well, some of which were mentioned by the second speaker. I'm going to talk about some of these challenges, especially focusing on the context of the country that I come from, which is India. So essentially, what we find right now is that Indian education systems are greatly promoting AI in education. Is the screen visible? Are the fonts visible? Should I increase the font size, or is it visible now? Is the screen clearly visible? Hello? Is the screen visible?
It's exhibiting, but the letters are really small.
Okay, is this better now?
Now it's better. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Better.
Thank you for
Thank you
that.
so much.
I just want to make sure that you're able to read it. So, for example, CBSE, which stands for the Central Board for Secondary Education, which is a very important examination board in India, they are planning to introduce AI right from grade 3 for the students, and these are very small children. So right from grade 3 to grade 8, they want to bring in AI. And in India, there is a hype that AI must be introduced in every sector, in education, in school education, in higher education, because there is a strong feeling that India is a tech superpower, and therefore we need to make sure that we are getting the full benefit of the AI bandwagon. However, understanding of what AI is, what AI does, how AI is produced, that knowledge is very limited. There is a lot of research which says that when we use AI, we are also not using some of our own skills and capacities. So, for example, in creating lesson plans, if teachers start using AI for lesson plans, the process of creating the lesson plan itself is a very important learning process for the teacher. And if I use AI for creating materials for myself, then my abilities to create those materials will dilute over time. Likewise, if students start using AI to provide answers, then they will do something which is called cognitive offloading. And cognitive offloading really means you're not going through the process of learning, you're simply producing the right answers. Now, in the Indian context, we have a problem called rote memorization, which is that in schools, teachers encourage students to memorize the text and reproduce the text to questions and examinations, irrespective of whether the student is understanding the concept or not. So, students may memorize or learn by heart entire passages of text from the textbooks that are given to them, and then depending on the answer, they will produce depending on the question, they'll produce the answer, but they may not really understand what they are writing. And that is exactly the way AI works. AI works by producing text without actually having any idea of what that text is, why it is producing it. We all know that text is produced purely by mechanisms of predictive ability based on what the text patterns have been in the past, what we call a stochastic parrot. So AI is nothing but a stochastic parrot. It just looks at text combinations that are stored from vast quantities of data that it stores, and then it just reproduces text. So even mentor text that the first speaker spoke about, the AI doesn't actually understand what is that mentor text. It just produces it from combinations of strings of tokens that are stored in the system. What does this do to the learning process is very important to understand. So cognitive decline is already being noticed in many experiments across the world. Teachers and college faculty have done research which shows that when AI is used over a period of time, it will actually result in the abilities of the teachers and the learners declining. So in the case of the first speaker, I would very much like a research on when AI is used for creating mentor text over a period of time, what does it do to the abilities of the teachers who otherwise were creating this mentor text on their own? That is something that we should really try and find out. So I already spoke about cognitive offloading and cognitive decline. The danger is in India, ChatGPT, OpenAI, as well as Alphabet, they're offering their Gen AI programs, which is ChatGPT and Gemini, free of cost to colleges, students, and teachers, because they know that they will be able to collect a lot of data from the Indian students and teachers, which they will then use to refine their own algorithms, including developing algorithms in local languages. So therefore, it's being offered free of cost to students. But what is happening as a result is cognitive offloading, cognitive decline, and in addition, there is a more severe problem, which is that research says that up to 40% of young people in India are also using AI as an emotional support. So in India, mental health facilities, mental health infrastructure is very limited. And students, young people, when they're under pressure, under stress, they want to talk to somebody. Instead of finding a human being to talk to, instead of trying to build a relationship with a human being, they're actually using ChatGPT or other AI tools, Gen AI tools, to take on the role of a friend. Now, when AI becomes a friend, it's a very dangerous situation because the AI doesn't have feelings, the AI doesn't have empathy. AI is programmed by the creators of AI to actually be psychophantic, and therefore, when you use AI for emotional support, it will always agree with you, it will flatter you, it will encourage you to use it again and again, but it can also be very dangerous. We all know of the case in America where a young person died by suicide because of interacting with AI for emotional support over a period of time, and they actually encourage that person to die by suicide. So, emotional dependence is a very serious problem with AI, Gen AI use, and India is sitting really on a huge volcano of problems where we can anticipate that due to extensive use of Gen AI for emotional support, it's going to manipulate. What the AI will do is it will start manipulating the people, and that is important to consider. So there are possibilities of use of AI, of course, and both speakers have spoken about it. So there are beneficial possibilities, but it's very important that the benefits are juxtaposed against the harmful potential of AI. And people have already started saying that AI use should be seen as similar to drug use, which is No drug is introduced to a population without a series of testing done on it. And then the drug is not simply introduced to the entire population at one go. It is given to a small set of people, then a greater set of people, then more people. At every point in time, there is a checking. Is it causing harm? Is the harm more than the benefit? And then only the drug is released after months and maybe years of drug testing. Today, AI is being released without any testing at all, without even the company that's providing the AI actually completely understanding what the AI is doing, which is extremely dangerous for humanity. We all have spoken about how AI is beneficial, but I think even more important is to understand that our continued use of AI can cause great problems to human beings at an individual level through affecting the cognitive abilities as well as our emotional abilities. And at the same time, at a social level, also, it can create huge problems for learning and education as well. So I would say that AI is now being forced on education systems. So in different universities across the world, the managements are signing agreements with companies like OpenAI or with uh, Alphabet and implementing AI with their in their institutions without actually taking the teachers and the faculty into confidence. And that is dangerous because teachers cannot start using a technology that they don't understand themselves. Understanding a technology is not simply knowing how to give prompts. So prompt engineering is how to use the technology. But I think even more than how to use technology is the understanding of what is the good about the technology, what is the harm about the technology, when to use it, when not to use it. This is what we call as critical literacy. We all know the term critical literacy. So we need critical digital literacy. We need critical AI literacy to ensure that teachers are not becoming prompt engineers and offloading their cognitive abilities to AI, which will create a huge peril for the education system because after a few years, the teacher's abilities and the students' abilities, both cognitive and affective, will be severely affected and will become completely dependent on AI. This AI is not being produced for public interest, it is being produced for private profit. I'll come to that later. So in India, for example, already government schools are using AI for collecting images of children and uploading them online for attendance monitoring. Now, this is called facial recognition, and facial recognition is hugely dangerous because when images are uploaded online, it is always possible that there will be a data theft or there is a security lapse, and then data of the children's photos is available to predators, to criminals, to child trafficking or people gangs, and therefore they will put the children at a grave danger. We already know that AI is used for nudification, where you can just give the image of a person and then the AI will create a nude representation of that person. In the Indian context, where social norms do not allow young people to talk about problems to elders and to teachers and others, it is very, very high potential for children to be blackmailed, young people to be blackmailed, even older people to be blackmailed by criminal gangs that can use images that are developed or created using AI. So there is a huge problem that as more and more images of children and of teachers are being uploaded online, they become more and more vulnerable to sexual images being uploaded, and therefore putting their security and safety at stake. In India, we are also using AI in early childhood education centers for language learning. The previous speaker spoke about how AI can be used for language learning. The problem with that is that the AI is not developed in Colombia, the AI is not developed in India, the AI is not developed in our countries. It's developed in the US. So in India, when they're using, for example, Amazon's Alexa as the mechanism for learning language, the culture of the place actually will get subverted. We are talking about language as well as education and society. So when I use a AI platform for language learning, language is not simply vocabulary, but language is also culture and language is practice. And therefore, when I'm using a tool that Amazon has created for the American market, the English that I'm going to learn in the Anganwadis will be reflective of American culture, American thinking, and maybe the thinking of the companies that are providing the technology. And that will certainly have a very significant negative impact on the local culture, on the local understanding, and the local wisdom in the institution. So, Indian education, whether at the early child level, or at the school level, or at the college level, is going to face serious challenges because of AI use. And I suspect this is true. This is true for other countries also, but I'm talking from the Indian context today. And of course, we know that the AI data that it produces is not neutral in terms of gender. 96% of the images that are available deepfake is actually pornographic content. So sharing of images I already spoke about, for sexual harassment, for blackmail, for extortion. This has become extremely common across the world. So sexually violative content, abusive content is created, and it is used to manipulate images so that women can be blackmailed, men can be blackmailed. AI is not neutral, and there is an institution in India called caste, where human beings are separated on the basis of their birth into certain families. It is a little like race, and it is determined by birth. So that when ChatGPT is asked questions about different human beings' occupations, it actually reflects caste hierarchies. So, for example, the Brahmins are supposed to be the knowledge keepers. So, it will construct knowledge about them or sentences about them, wherein Brahmins are given higher roles, and Dalits, who are at the other end of the social spectrum, who are oppressed, who are abused, who are stigmatized, they are given identities which are very stigmatizing, which are demeaning. So Gen AI is, when it gives you ideas, when it's giving you, even for example, the mentor text that the first person spoke about, the cultural implications, the stratification, those kind of challenges, the gendered implications of the content that comes out, these are very important things to study. And the faculty needs to be completely aware that you cannot take any text, but you need to actually understand it, you need to examine its validity, and then only you should use it. And those are very high order skills, and there is always a danger that biases will creep in because of the AI being used. Lastly, Indian languages, we all know that, AI, the previous speaker also spoke about it. The Gen AI predominantly is available in English, but there are 22 languages in India which are spoken by more than a million people, and AI is not available there. So therefore, it creates a kind of discriminatory situation where AI resources are available in some languages but not in others. The government of India has started a program called Bashini, which is trying to address this limitation by creating digital content and algorithms that work in the Indian languages also. So that is the program of the Indian government. So I was talking about all these issues connected to education and AI in India, and I was wanting to highlight more the challenges and problems that we are facing because of AI that is being used. Now, why is there a problem? Is it not that AI is useful? I would say that the problem is not really AI. We may think that the problem is AI, but AI is only a technology. The real problem with AI is that the control over the production and distribution of AI is under the control of a few technology corporations across the world. So, OpenAI, which is having controlled by Microsoft; Gemini, which is controlled by Google, owned by Alphabet; Meta owns AI, uh, uh, Grok, Elon Musk owns AI. So there are just a few companies across the world which are creating the Gen AI that is being used by all of us. Now, these companies are not creating AI for making human beings better or for making society better. They're making it primarily for making profit for themselves. And here I would like to mention there is a Professor Postman, the late Professor Postman, who came up with 5 laws of technology. And one of the most important laws he says is every technology creates winners and losers. So even today, when Gen AI has come, it is Elon Musk, it is Mark Zuckerberg, it's Sundar Pichai and his friends in Google. These people have become extremely powerful because they can manipulate us, they collect information about us. We do not have any say in the way the algorithms work. We just are users of algorithms. Naturally, we can be manipulated in ways that are harmful for our own interest, and we can see that such manipulation happening across the world, in the social sphere, in the economic sphere, in the political sphere. So society is being altered by the power of the big tech corporations. And therefore, it is very important to understand that AI that we use in education is not neutral, it is not benign. It is highly dangerous because it's being provided to us by corporations whose motivations, whose interests we don't have any control over. And Postman says that tech creates winners and losers. and the winners want to persuade the losers that the losers are the winners. So we are all happy using AI without understanding that actually the losses on our side and the gains are on the side of the big tech. Over the last 20-30 years, income and wealth inequalities across the world have increased a lot. And one important reason for this is that we have created tech corporations which are controlling different aspects of the economy and society. These are the platforms. So Amazon is a platform, Instagram is a platform, YouTube is a platform, Airbnb is a platform. All these platforms, which are owned by private corporations, are increasingly controlling different aspects of our life, our economic life, our socio-cultural life, our political life. And that's quite dangerous for us because that is a direct impact on digital sovereignty. The previous speaker spoke about digital sovereignty. So we have a real danger today that whether it's Colombia or Brazil or any of the other countries in the world are going to become slaves to the AI hegemony established by either USA or China. So there will be huge pressure on other countries to become a part of one of these AI camps, and that is going to create a huge loss of sovereignty, of digital sovereignty of these countries. There's something that we need to be very careful of. This is something very relevant to education because when we talk about AI in education, it is not simply using AI in education. It is also education about AI. We all need to learn more about AI. Through our schools and colleges, we need to help young people become aware of the dangers of AI that poses to their socio-political autonomy, to their sense of agency. An education institution should actually promote a bigger understanding of the challenges of AI to political and social life of few people, societies, countries, economies. And that is another way of looking at AI in education, not simply where we learn how to use AI, but where we learn to critique AI, to learn to understand AI, and learn to build a world where AI benefits us without harming us. So I want to, take 5 more minutes and close. I think that main issue that we need to do is we need to have tech regulation. We need to have data regulation, and we need to identify specific areas where we need to use AI, where we should not use AI. And I would say that education is an area where we need to develop our cognitive abilities, where we need to develop our effective abilities. The use of AI definitely reduces the need for us to develop our cognitive abilities, reduces our need to develop effective abilities. So, definitely in the case of education, we should use AI only when we have high clarity of its benefit and high clarity that it's not going to harm us. Particularly, young people are very vulnerable. I already mentioned about people who are dying by suicide because the AI is persuading them to die by suicide and also providing them approaches and methods to commit violence on themselves and on others. And therefore, young people are very vulnerable. School going children, college going children are very vulnerable. And therefore, education has to be a very, very, very careful area where we should not start using AI without thinking through it in a very clear way. I would say the most important aspect of AI is when AI is proprietary. Proprietary means it is owned by a company, it is not owned by us. The company can change the rules of the game at any point in time. Today, ChatGPT 3 will come, tomorrow 4 will come, day after 5 will come. The features will be different, the usage will be different. We have no say in it. That is not how citizens of a country can or a society can exist with having no rights. We are becoming docile subjects of these big tech corporations through the use of AI, and we need to be very, very careful about that. So, these are all the things I want to talk about the dangers. I also want to take just 2 minutes to talk about what is also something that we can do. And I would say that these are the things that I would like to talk about, which are actually from a use point of view. That if you are able to create AI that is public AI, where we are using public investment. So, for example, in all our countries, we have a public education system. We don't rely on private education. We don't rely on the market to provide schools for every child because we know that if market is providing schools for the children, the market will create rich schools for rich people and poor schools for poor people. But if education has to be an equalizer, education has to provide social mobility, if education has to transform society for public welfare towards an ideal society, then there is a need for public investment in education. In the same way, we need to think that as far as technology is concerned, today we have accepted that technology has to be produced by private corporations. That's a very serious problem. We need to change the way we look at technology. We need to see technology as an important social resource. And if education is something that is supposed to be available universally for everybody, and it should be controlled for public welfare, for the social good, then technology also has to be publicly owned. And use cases should be determined by us based on public welfare usage. We know that in the drug industry, while we produce Viagra, which is for very rich people to have very certain kinds of needs. Sleeping sickness, which is affecting thousands of people in Africa, doesn't have a remedy because there is no market in producing a medicine for sleeping sickness. That shows a sick society because we have decided that health of people is dependent on whether they're wealthy or not. In the same way, AI should not be produced for the market by the market alone, because then the use cases will be determined by Sam Altman and by Mark Zuckerberg. But if the use cases are to be determined by us, then we need to start asking questions. How do we allow AI not to create massive unemployment? We are all talking about how AI is going to take away jobs, and it will take away jobs. But we are not willing to think that the model of production AI is the problem. AI could be produced where we create more leisure for all of us rather than creating unemployment. So, tech design based on public good, then market led. This is not a theoretical thing. For example, in IT for Change, my organization, we have been working on what we call as an alternate model, where we have created a program where AI is used, but these are not large language models. They are not LLMs. They are small models which run on a desktop. There is no need for large data servers. It is run on a desktop within the school itself. It is managed and controlled by the people who are teaching the children. The data is within the computer system. It is not a part of some data center. It doesn't require large amounts of electricity for every query that is run. So actually, that particular AI is for the purpose of language learning, where we have used AI to create text representations of audio recordings of students to analyze their language proficiency and give inputs to the teacher on how the AI can support pedagogy of the teacher. The AI will not recommend a particular pedagogy, but gives information based on which the teacher can then create material and pedagogies for teaching language. So this is to show you that although I've been very critical of AI, but the problem is not AI. As I mentioned, AI can be a force for good, but that can only happen if it is produced with keeping public welfare in mind, and it is ethical. It is not purely driven by market considerations. So I think overall we need to create a situation where we need to have a global commission on AI, just like we have a global AI atomic energy commission, because atomic energy is very dangerous. We don't want to allow atomic energy to be simply produced by anybody and everybody. It has to be controlled globally. In the same way, we need to have a global AI commission. This was actually a call by the current UN Secretary General. He said that just like we have an atomic energy commission, we need to have a global AI commission. This global AI commission has to bring out the rules and regulations, how AI can be used, what should AI be used for, what it should not be used for, who should produce it, how should it be produced, how can it be made available to everybody, how can we avoid people being manipulated. These are all the things we need to do, and for that a global commission is required. IT for Change also is a part of a global network of organizations which is looking at how AI can be used for the public good, and that's called the Global Digital Justice Forum. It has got organizations working in different sectors, not only education, but organizations working with workers, with agriculture, with health, and different areas of the society and economy. And I invite organizations to also become a part of the Global Digital Justice Forum so that AI can be used for the public good and is not used for private profit alone. I stop my presentation here, and I thank the organizers once again for this opportunity to make this presentation.
Much for sharing your work with us. I would like to take a moment to thank all of our panelists once again for their participation. These were very relevant presentations that greatly contribute to our discussion. Now, I would like to invite all our panelists to join us for the Q&A session. So let's start. We have a question for Gurumurthy. What forms of education can genuinely emerge through digital technologies, avoiding being subordinated to profit extraction and surveillance logics?
Yeah, shall I go ahead and answer? Yeah, so there is a today's technology is privately owned by corporations. So the alternative to that is what we call as public ed tech. In all our countries, we have school systems, and we are familiar that it is the government that invests in public education, not only school education but also higher education. We know that unless there are public institutions, public schools, publicly funded colleges, it will not be available to everybody. Imagine if only companies were running schools and colleges, then straight away the poor people would not get good quality education because they will not be able to afford it. In the same way, we need to have private public funding of technology, and that's also available in all the countries. I'm sure Brazil or India or China, South Africa, these are countries that are investing a lot in digital technologies through public funding. And the open source communities, free and open source communities, have created a lot of open source algorithms. So we all know that the AI is also available as open source algorithms. For example, the DeepSeek AI that China has produced, the Chinese company has produced, is open source. So we can take that AI, we can start using it without being controlled by the Chinese company. So there are open source technologies, free and open source technologies, technology platforms. There are government programs for funding it, but we need to increase it a lot. Today, the investment in technology is more by the private sector and very little by the public sector and by the government. So the governments of Colombia, for example, the Colombian government is very well known in the global press for resisting the hegemony of the private Western corporations. Similarly, Brazil is very well known for the head of the Lula, President Lula, is actively opposing. For example, Elon Musk tried to do something with his technology platform in Brazil, and the Supreme Court of Brazil did not allow him to do that. So we need to encourage much more public investment in digital technology so that we create alternatives to the proprietary models that are being promoted by the big tech corporations. Big tech corporations are controlling our society and our world. It can only be harmful. We need to resist that, and more ideas have to come in from all of us to make a new world happen.
Okay, thank you. There's another one for you. Can emancipatory alternatives still be built within the existing socio-political systems that we are part of?
So this is a very difficult question to answer because, like somebody said, Yogi Berra said, it's very difficult to predict, especially the future. So uh, can it be built? Yes, I think we have to proceed from where we are. No ideal society is going to drop from the heavens. The ideal society is built by each of us by working on a daily basis, correct? And when we can work today, we have to work with the today's society only. The tomorrow society that will come because of the work we do today has to be done in today's society. So today there is a capitalist model, there is neoliberal capitalism, there is an abdication by the states across the world, most countries of the world. The states are abdicating the responsibilities. Education funding is getting affected, higher education funding is getting affected, but there are good examples across the world where this is not, everything is not lost. So I would say that emancipatory alternatives have to be always constructed at every point in time with the opportunities that we have got. We cannot be waiting for the perfect world to come. Working with what we have, with the resources we have, the constraints and challenges we have, that is how we are going to build a better world. The better world will be built in evolutionary manner by improvements day by day. There is not going to be, there may not be, we cannot be keep waiting for a revolution to come on one day. We have to work for it every day. That's what I would like to say. But my friends from Colombia may also have some, because their government is a very revolutionary government, we know that. So what are their views, and also would be good to hear.
Well, since I got called out, I'm happy to jump in. I mean, I like the question about the emancipatory, and particularly because we have to think about emancipatory means agency and agency and choice. And I think one of the problems we have sometimes with AI, it's not that we're learning to use it, but that there is this whole, I mean, the media frenzy that I'm talking about in my presentation about, it's AI or bust. It's AI or stay behind with the dodo bird. And that discourse is equally insidious and is equally dangerous because not always do we need AI. I mean, we can advocate for its use, understanding that there are moments where we do not need AI. There are moments where we don't want AI. There are moments in the textual creation where we don't want it. And we have to acknowledge that not wanting it, not using it, not needing it is part of the emancipation. It's that is not simply, oh, we have to use it because we have to use it. No, it's we have to use it when it fits the pedagogical purpose, when it fits an agenda, when it fits a goal, when it fits an environmental concern. It's not simply used it just because we have to jump on the bandwagon. Like I'm kind of sometimes I think AI for me is a tool, and with tool when we talk about the ethics of care, we think about the same notion that you have to be careful when you use tools. You know, when you tell children that they shouldn't run with scissors, so kind of like sometimes we shouldn't run with AI because we could hurt ourselves, like we could hurt by running with scissors. So it's part of the emancipatory. It's also the ethical use, but also the choice, the calculated, the let's say the educated choice whether to use it and when, or not to use it and why. So I think that's also part of that emancipation or the emancipatory view. I mean, I'm sure that Lou would also have something else to add to this conversation, so I'll just pass the microphone to her.
Answer the next question.
Okay. Another question. Any of you feel free to answer. Given the current geopolitics, what can educators do beyond critical literacies to reclaim some agency over the cognitive infrastructure their students inhabit? Who would like to answer this question?
I can go in first while my panelists are thinking, just so that we save time. So I think this is a very difficult situation we are in now because let's say in India, already before AI was there, students were using Google search to find answers to questions for their homework assignments. So you get a homework assignment because the teacher expects that you will think about the questions that are asked and you will use that process to learn. But the student finds that it's far more convenient to go to Google search, get the answers and put it in, and then take the homework to the next teacher to the school the next day. With Gen AI, it has become much more rampant. And statistics research says that 50% plus students in colleges are using AI to submit assignments, and I think this is a problem across the world. Now, the real problem is it's not simply a pedagogical problem. It is a partly a pedagogical problem because our assessment systems are rewarding correct answers. They're not rewarding right thinking. And we need to really change the assessment system so that students are able to, without giving the right answer, without feeling the pressure to give the right answer, are able to invest the effort to learn. So I think pedagogy has to change. Teachers have to start encouraging discussions in the classroom about how certain ways of learning are going to be negative and harmful for the children. If children are going to use AI for answering questions, in the long run, it's going to affect their own cognitive abilities. But I am also told there is research which says that simply discussing with the children doesn't help because the incentives to teach to cheat are very high. So in my mind map, I had a particular node which said that AI is a situation where machines are assessing the production of other machines, and that will be a tragedy for education. I think teachers have to start talking about it more, and I would say we have to talk about it critically. We are not having enough critical voices. We are having more and more people talking about how AI is great and how it's going to solve the problems of the world and how it's going to save people's time, but it's going to destroy us as a civilization. And I think more talking about it in institutions, across institutions, is most important.
Dr. Raúl or Dr. Luciana, would you like to answer the question?
I'd like to connect this question to the next one, which I think is really relevant in terms of teacher education. So in terms of agency, I always like to connect use of AI technologies in general, and specifically Gen AI, to humanity. So the importance of us how we as humans engage with Gen AI. And so I think that's really important to consider and think about. And in terms of teacher education, if you allow me to connect, that piece to the next question, which is, what are the main challenges currently facing teacher education in this area? Challenges is to really see the humanity behind our use of, again, any technology. And so we're talking about AI now. In the past, we were talking about cell phones and use of cell phones in the classroom, for example. So it's really important to be thinking about all of these new technologies in light of what we do with them, right? And so in terms of teacher education, I believe that one of the main challenges is actually how people are afraid and challenged by what we know about new technologies. And so instead of being afraid and being so critical, and going to do this, we actually have to think critically about how we prepare our students, and specifically future teachers, to be able to use not just this particular technology, but others in the future as well. So what our colleagues here spoke about reality is really at the core of, I think, what has been most challenging piece for teacher educators and for teachers as well, practicing and pre-service, at the pre-service level. So how we prepare teacher educators to think about technologies is extremely important, as well as how we prepare our pre-service and in-service or practicing teachers. So I hope that that makes sense in the context of that particular question.
Well, I want to go back to the previous question for 1 second, if only because, they mentioned curricular literacies, and people who know my work, they know that's one of the things I've been doing the most for the past 20 years. So when I even say beyond curricular literacies, I'm like, well, first of all, curricular literacies is in terms of the reflexivity that happens in curricular literacies, those are the questions we talk about. So even so, that's what I'm saying. Like, there is no I mean, let's say no, you don't go beyond curricular literacies. You need to go deeper within curricular literacies, because one of the big questions in curricular literacies is how we are framing textual creation and textual interpretation as a social-political event. So in curricular literacies, textual creation is agentic by nature. So I would say my question is, what other questions can we generate through curricular literacies to continue debating the current geopolitics and how that intersects with AI in terms of, this idea. And I love the last presentation and the initial talking about, that there are winners and there are losers, and they're making the losers pretend they're winners. Is how, from that curricular literacies perspective, how are we going to disrupt that message that we are winning when we may be losing, and how we are going to really, and I'm going to plug in the other research on video games, how are we really going to engage with a real sense of victory when we're using these technologies? And I stop there because there's more to say about the next question, or if there's another question, I probably there's more ground to cover, so I don't want to monopolize the conversation.
The other question that Dr. Luciana already answered was, what are the main challenges currently facing teacher education in this area? Dr. Raúl, would you like to answer?
Yeah, I'm happy. Yeah, because I'm also deeply involved in teacher education in Colombia and everywhere. I would say one of the first problems is the instrumentality. So a lot of my work, and you've noticed I mentioned epistemology, because a lot of my work focuses also in how we look at epistemology to develop instrumentality, and not the way we usually do teacher development. Is you begin with instrumentality, hoping that you can get into epistemology. And I always like to say you cannot go from here to here, because that's just as futile as trying to rebottle toothpaste. You cannot put toothpaste back in the tube. I mean, I tried and I failed miserably. So, but from epistemology, I can build instrumentality. So we have to start thinking about AI, not only in terms of the tool part, the know-how, the instrumental part, but start with the epistemology, with the big questions about the why you want to do it, how, when, where. I mean, kind of cover all the WH questions. If you an English teacher, just cover all the WH questions before you start doing the AI, and that's a good start. So develop the epistemological foundation, and from there, what you're gonna give teachers is a series of conceptual tools that are gonna lead to better practical decisions. So they don't simply have to they have to take up whatever tool they're selling them, whatever tool the edutainer or edu influencer of the month is trying to sell them, but they can make well thought out decisions based on their context, based on their reality, based on their students, based on their media savvy and their students' media savvy. So I think the big challenge is how we move teacher education from the instrumentality of AI into really looking at the bigger picture, which is the purposeful use of AI. It's not simply the use of AI for the sake of AI, but the purposeful and methodical and reflexive use of AI within a learning environment in a particular socio-cultural context.
Gurumurthy, would you like to join the
Just very briefly to add that what Raúl spoke in terms of critical literacy, I think the main problem in teacher education is we are focusing on how to learn to use AI, which I spoke in my presentation, and therefore critical literacy has to extend to critical digital literacy, when to use the digital, when not to use it. When not to use is equally important. We always get into this literacy, how to use, but when not to use is also very important, because particularly when it comes to AI and education, most of the time you're using it to not think or not feel, and that is a severe problem. Critical AI literacy is now becoming more and more commonly understood. So, for example, IT for Change is planning a program which education institutions with the student teachers who are going to complete their degrees and undergrad degrees in education, a full semester exploring what is this thing called critical AI literacy. How do they handle AI in a manner that they don't just do prompt engineering, but they know when to use, how to help the students to also learn the same thing. That is the most important thing missing in teacher education, I feel. And what we are doing in pre-service needs to be done in the in-service space as well.
Thank you. Would any of you like to add something else? No? Okay. So we've reached the end of our panel. It has been a wonderful exchange of knowledge. I would like to once again thank our panelists and everyone who has been following the presentations and the QA session. I invite you all to stay with us. And now I hand it over to our panel lead for this session, Anthony.
So, I will just wait a minute. I would like to thank you, Karoline Garcez, for being our moderator, and also thank you, Gurumurthy, Raúl, Mora, Dr. Luciana de Oliveira, for being here in name of the organizing. And just a quick reminder, just a minute, before we finish, our next panel will begin now, just in a few minutes at 12 p.m. The next panel will also be conducted in English. So if you want to watch, it will be here on YouTube. The panelists are Dr. Ethan Train, Dr. Jefferson do Carmo, and Dr. Leticia Moraes. The first one is from United States of America at Georgia State University. Dr. Jefferson and Dr. Leticia Moraes are from here, Brazil. The first one from the State University of Feira de Santana, and Dr. Leticia Moraes from Federal University of Paraíba. On behalf of the event organizers, I would like to thank you also, again, Karoline Garcez, for your amazing conduction of the panel, also the panelists for your amazing presentations, and everyone who is joining us live, and also to those who may be watching this recording at a later time. Thank you so much, and that's it. Bye-bye.
Aprovado pelo Departamento de Letras Estrangeiras da Universidade Federal de Sergipe e certificado pelo CNPq, o Grupo Tecla é uma referência em inovação e pesquisa. Atuamos na intersecção entre tecnologias, educação e linguística aplicada, transformando o aprendizado de forma dinâmica. Nossos pilares são práticas educativas inovadoras, pesquisas interdisciplinares e soluções para demandas sociais. Exploramos inteligência artificial e inteligência artificial generativa, revolucionando o ensino e a aprendizagem. Além disso, participamos ativamente de iniciação científica, mestrado e doutorado em educação, promovendo colaboração e inovação. Tecla, transformando linguagens, educação e tecnologia. Junte-se a nós!